Welcome, everybody. This is the fifth seminar, if I'm not mistaken, of the series in the Ubuntu Symposium of MenEngage. And the topic of this series is masculinities and climate change. Over the first 4 seminars that we already had, we have been specifically inviting people to come and talk about the work they did with men and boys to engage them in the climate crisis in a way that also serves our objective, obviously, of gender equality. And we decided for the last, for this seminar and the next one on the 6th of May, that it would be very useful if we can concentrate ourselves on the topic of strategy. So we want to look today and during the seminar of the 6th of May. In the first 4 seminars, we've invited people who talked about their projects on climate change and masculinity and how they involved men and boys to tackle climate change, but at the same time to reach our objective of gender equality, obviously, and how these two go together and the interesting crossroads. And it's been a very, very interesting seminar series. For those of you who have joined us before, they can testify to that. For those of you joining today for the first time, it is possible to look at the entire series if you log into the Ubuntu seminar website. And then you can see all the previous sessions as well. So today we change a little bit from the 4 previous seminars that we did, because in the previous seminars, the most important thing was that we had a number of speakers who then would be talking about the topic one after the other, and the audience was mainly, passive, or they could ask a couple of questions. But since we are moving now to the later stage of the series, we think it's important that we start to engage the public more, and this means you, the participants to this series, to find out who you are, what your knowledge is, what you can share with us, because definitely there is a lot of expertise and knowledge and competences and experiences in this room among the people joining us every time, and we want to find out more about this. During the seminar of today, which is number 5, and the one which we will be holding in about a bit more than, I think, 1 or 2 weeks' time, on May the 6th, which will be the 6th seminar. During these two, we want to focus on strategies and actions, because we're drawing to the end of the seminar series, and we think it's important that we start to reflect what is it that we can do as MenEngage to tackle climate crisis, and doing it in such a way that men and boys are also engaged for gender equality, and that we can really do productive win-win projects and actions on the crossroads of gender equality and climate change. This is really the topic. This means that for the seminar of today, we only invited 1 speaker, but it's really a very interesting one that has been talking already in some of the previous seminars, and it is Sohanur, who the ones who have joined in the previous seminars, you have met Sohanur already. Sohanur is from Bangladesh. He's a climate activist there, who's also a member of the MenEngage Alliance, and we're very honored to have Sohanur again. And specifically because very recently, since Joe Biden came to power and he sent his Minister Kerry to travel around the world to prepare the climate conference, Sohanur has taken some very, very interesting initiatives. And we thought it would be very useful that he shares these initiatives now with this group as an introduction to this seminar. When Sohanur has spoken about the actions that he did and what it brought about, then for the second part of today, we will be dividing all the participants, which are 18, I can see already now. We're going to divide all of you into subgroups. And if we are around 20 participants, then I suggest that we would go for four or 5 subgroups. And then within these subgroups, we will ask you to reflect with the people in your subgroups on concrete strategies that we could do as MenEngage, or maybe some ideas of actions. That's what we want to reflect upon. And then you need somebody to take note. We will have a plenary afterwards, come back and discuss and listen to what all of you have been saying and exchanging with each other. So, welcome for those of you in the meantime, because I can see the participants are keeping to come into the room, which is fantastic. We are very happy with the high number of people participating in our seminars every time. And so now I want to give the word to Sohanur from Bangladesh to introduce the topic of actions and testify about the wonderful actions that he did in Bangladesh recently with Minister Kerry and writing a letter to him. So please, Sohanur.
Thank you, Katrin, and our facilitator, Baidar. And thank you, MenEngage Alliance, for giving this honor to expressing my experience and activism. And it's not honoring me, also my activist, Fridays for Future activists around the world who are fighting for a justice, and they want to change the system. So we know that young people's voice, young people's power is very crucial. And you know, our leader on Fridays for Future, Greta Thunberg, is a young girl who changed the total climate narrative in the world. And that girls are challenging the global leaders, that how the global leaders are betraying with us with their sweet word, with their empty word, and their empty summit. So we are accountable the global system, global leaders, to a right pathway for the tackling this climate crisis. Because climate change is not only now a environmental issue. Climate change is not now a development or NGO issues. It's a social issue, it's an economical issue, it's also now it's political issue. So we should challenge this crisis with good leadership, like COVID-19 pandemic. So we are seeing those countries are doing great whose leadership is strong, and they are failed whose leadership is not strong. So, in Bangladesh, our most of the demography is young, is 2/3, including adolescent and young people. So we are also challenging and accountability to account our government for this stage. So our prime minister now, she is the global voice. She is the now current chair of Climate Vulnerable Forum for 47 vulnerable countries. So she mentioned in COP25 that our children will not forgive us if we fail to ensure their future. Every moment, the cost of our inaction for the global community inaction is devastating every living person in Earth. The time is to act is now. So it's clear message from our Prime Minister. Now she is the leading the Climate Forum. So another picture is that. So when US was signing the Paris Agreement in 2015 in COP21 in Paris, John Kerry, he is the former foreign minister who put sign in the Paris Agreement. So he was brought her grandchildren as a symbol of protecting our life, our future. So it's a message for total global community that we should protect children's future. So not only future, also present. Because climate change is currently threatening our livelihood, our future, our present too. So you know that total US administration has changed to when Biden was the new president of US. So Biden was rejoined to the Paris Agreement, and they want to gain leadership on climate in climate change sector. So, and as part of this initiative, Biden was hosted a 2 days climate summit. It's mentioned Leader Summit on climate, which is also mentioned as Biden Summit. So on Biden Summit was hosted on marking Earth Day on 22 and 23rd April. So Bangladesh also invited there, and John Kerry was visited some countries like Arab Emirates, India, and Bangladesh. So when John Kerry was visiting in Bangladesh, we young people was write a open letter to John Kerry and also Biden administration to gain genuine leadership, not fake leadership, because their every fossil fuel project harming us, hampering us. Because US leadership is needed, because many countries like Australia, they are following US. What are doing US? So they are cutting, and US also the second emitter country in the world. So without cutting emission and also injustice, without climate finance, we cannot solve this crisis. So their commitment, their not only commitment, their real action needed to solve this crisis. So I was written to John Kerry. So remember when you brought your young granddaughter to the United Nations while signing the Paris Agreement, we are the generation that has to deal with more severe climate impact than ever and are already beating its burn. Our children will face disaster at a scale we have never seen before. As young people from around the world, we demand an end to inaction to climate-induced loss and damage which endanger our future. So this loss and damage is our resource loss and damage, our life losses, and also natural resources biodiversity losses. So next one is the in Friday's Future movement. So we also pushing up and also creating pressure for real commitment, for real summit. So currently we have 5 demands all over the Fridays for Future movement. So when we are joined with Greta's movement, so mainly it was a Western lead movement from Sweden. So main topic was the cutting emission, but our main agenda was climate justice, because
Sohanur, do you have a problem to
can you hear me?
us? Yes, we can hear you. No problem.
Okay. So when the Fridays for Future started the strike, so the main agenda was the cutting emission, but they was not focused on climate justice or climate finance or compensation or resilience building. But our agenda was climate justice for our vulnerable communities. So then we changed total narrative. No global north, no global south. It's emitters country, and second one MAPA, most affected peoples and communities like Bangladesh or many vulnerable countries. So Fridays for Future accepted this term MAPA. So we think it's a great inclusion for our position. So currently, Fridays for Future main focus no more empty promise, and first one to cutting fossil fuel project and on investment on this industry. Second one, annual binding carbon budget, and third one is very important for us, like economic, racial, and gender justice in climate policy. And our main enemy, mentioning enemy, is same for economic injustice, for racial injustice, for gender injustice, and also to threatening the worker rights. Because the main cause we know capitalism, the main cause is the colonism, the main cause is the toxic masculinity or the wrong power practice. So these enemies or these elements are harming our nature, our planet, and also our women, children, girls, and also gender identities. So our main point is changing the global system. So without changing the global system, we cannot achieve any justice or social justice. So it's a core or heart point for our movement. For like me, a brown skinned boys or young men, I can join this movement, or a black girls can join this movement or this climate policy. So many countries' climate policy is black and white. They are sometimes mentioning gender, but gender is not only women. Gender also should include trans communities. Gender action plan should include the gender diverse soci people. So they should be included on the policy. So fourth one is a protect and safeguard democracy, citizens' participation in climate decision making. So sometimes government taking activism is a crime. So we are activists. We are not doing crime. So in the last quarter, one activist in India was sent to jail to develop a toolkit for supporting farmer protests. So developing a toolkit or a activism so is not crime or offense. So we are also fighting for this, and sometimes our life should threaten when we are talking against coal. So every country should should protect our democracy, our human rights, and citizen participation. And fifth one is making ecocide an international crime. We need a global treaty or global law that ecocide, like harming natural forest Sundarban or Amazon forest. So killing these forests should be a ecocide and should be punished who are destroying our mangrove or our forest or our nature. So it's 5-point demands from Fridays for Future. So in Bangladesh, as a young movement, we started our activism in 2016, and previous time we also worked with child rights, worked with child marriage, but we found a hidden cause, that is climate crisis is fueling these social inequalities. So we have now 25 district unit, and we mobilize our young people for claiming climate justice, fighting for climate justice through mobilization, through capacity development, through supporting their campaign. So in 2019, we have a landmark victory for not only Bangladesh. It is the first ever a declaration. I will share in my next presentation. So it's my work, and our young people not only fighting, they also supporting the most vulnerable communities, because we are in the compound crisis. We are in the climate crisis, we are in the water crisis, and we are all the global pandemic COVID-19. So it's not a single crisis, but we young people in the front line, every crisis, with our power and with our contribution. But our young people feeling abandoned by international community, but they are not doing enough for protecting us. So also, like in Cox's Bazar is a long beach sea beach. So foreign countries, they are dumping their waste in our ocean. So it's killing our biodiversity. So why we should pay to cleaning these activities or these thing? So but we are cleaning this sea. So next one is we also fighting in parliament or anywhere for climate justice and also capacity building initiative. And government also recognized our activism in 2018 as Joy Bangla Youth Award. We also attended his global platform, his Commonwealth, to speak for climate justice. And we also doing global advocacy with the COP26 presidency UK to just transition, because COVID-19 is a new chance to reshape our system and transition. And if we want to coping with the COVID, coal or fossil is not good. We should transit to renewable. So it's our three landmark is first one in 2019 to considering our youth movement. Bangladesh Parliament declared first ever planetary emergency. So many countries like UK Parliament was adopted climate emergency, but our parliament, our policymaker, our parliamentarian declared planetary emergency, acknowledging our movement. It's also focused not only climate, it also focused on biodiversity, nature, and ecosystem. So after that, this declaration, government set up 29 coal-based power plants. And amid COVID-19 lockdown, we start digital strike and tagging global leaders to phase out and to cutting investment in the coal. So in 2020, government is phasing out 29 coal-based power plant, but 5 will be still who is in working. But it is another great victory. The government is transiting their investment from coal, but they are switching to LNG, liquid natural gas. So it's not right pathway. Coal, liquid natural gas, everything is fossil. So now we fighting for a Green New Deal to cutting this initiative and go with the green. And this year, government declared a plan. It's decarbonizing prosperity. with the renewable energy. So now we are on right pathway, but we should guide them, we should accountable them, we go forward real climate action. So what we have learned from this climate movement or mobilization, we have to be ready with skill. Young people need skill, knowledge, tools, and create our own space in policy making, decision making process. In our country or global mechanism, our participation is not ensured. So they are not taking us to decision making table. So, but we should ready to join here. We have to continue demanding action to protect us from climate change impact nationally and globally until our demands are met. We should continue this. And last one is we have to unite it locally, nationally, and globally for a world that we will share. So next one is, so we set up a coastal youth action hub to supporting the most affected communities in Bangladesh. It's 29 coastal districts. So we're supporting youth-led organization to their shaping their idea and all kind of support and skill. So through this coastal youth action hub, we enhance access on knowledge and resource through capacity building, mentoring, fellowship, idea incubation, digital platform. We support on research, advocacy, and campaign like study action, research, advocacy campaign, youth parliament, linking local to global action like mapping youth organization database, networking, solidarity event. So it's our new initiative from last year. So our scientists, we are behind, science, solution, and solidarity can tackle this global crisis. So we are behind the scientists. So Bangladeshi scientists, they are supporting us, and also parliamentarians are supporting full solidarity with us to go forward with this movement. So what we need in general as a movement, institutional support from national, local government, including academia, recognizing the uniqueness of youth-led organization. In Bangladesh, as a youth-led organization, we have huge barrier. We are not getting enough investment. We are not getting enough guidance. So many barriers we're facing in Bangladesh or our South Asian countries like India, Pakistan. But European countries, youth-led organization, they're getting more support in various sources. But we should fighting, but we need fuel like investment or guidance, but we are not getting enough. Foster impactful partnership with youth-friendly funding mechanism. Most of the NGOs, INGOs funding mechanism, they are wanting civil society organization, youth organization as a vendor. So we are not vendor. We are movement. We are a youth-led organization. We are not NGOs, but they are treating through their mechanism as a to build us as a vendor or NGOs. So international NGOs should need a paradigm shift to with a youth-friendly funding mechanism to supporting people's movement, to supporting youth movement. So create a space at national policy making and global negotiation. In global negotiation, our young people voice is not ensured, and most of the negotiator is a man. So sometimes we discussed about the men engagement. Men already involved. Everywhere men are negotiating, but they are creating this crisis. So women leadership, women voice, women participation in global negotiation can curb this crisis. But most of the negotiator is a man, and it's a man-made crisis, I think. So this our demand. So this slide particularly for MenEngage role. So as a MenEngage on with the masculinity lens and to the social justice, MenEngage should support our activism with solidarity, with, also masculinity lens also. Include us on the internal decision-making process within a national, regional, and global process. Without our participation in decision-making, we cannot shape our agenda with this platform. So our participation should be ensured there. Empower us and invest us on our activism in our movement. Support to intersectionality and human rights programming, because gender is not black and white. We have many elements. Also focus on the transgender, also focus on the soci people, also focus on the indigenous community. So we should onboard all community who are living behind in our society. So MenEngage can support our network to focus on this. And in particular in national network, Paris Agreement has a provision to develop national adaptation plan. So in first stage, it was only for vulnerable community. It was NAPA, National Action Plan, Adaptation Plan of Action. But now every country should develop, also US, also UK should develop national adaptation plan. So in adaptation or resilience building, SRAs are also one of the key. And in our coastal areas, due to natural disaster, due to the poverty, our young people and also women not getting enough service on SRHR. And currently, climate change fueled the water crisis. So women are suffering gynecological problems, disease also, and we now are also suffering from many diseases, waterborne disease. So also maternal mortality, like preeclampsia, waterborne disease, killed our mother, pregnant mother, and also children. So National Adaptation Plan should integrate SRHR on NAP process. Recently, I was at work with the ministry, and in a consultation, I was proposed to SRHR include in the NAP process. But they're telling it's not important issue. We mentioned gender on this. Gender will cover this, but gender will not cover SRHR. Gender will not cover trans issues. Gender will not cover the indigenous people's problem. So our network, country network, has a huge number of grassroots organization and national organization and academia. So it should be a joint forces. We can sensitize our ministry to change this, and it will be inclusive, I think, and it's needed for resilience building and for adaptation. So it's from ICPD. I was attended ICPD 25, supported by our SRSR for All project. I was a change maker for SRSR for All, who is facilitated by MenEngage Alliance. So one of the theme was to reproductive justice in ICPD, and in right side, I also contributed a blog that called for not only planetary justice or climate equity, also reproductive justice. So our country network can address this reproductive justice too in the climate planning. In Bangladesh, we also talked with the UNFPA, and recently UNFPA emailed me. They want to work with us. So it's update from my country. So it's our website from Coastal Youth Action Hub. So we are creating many infographics or a story on this website from Bangladesh. And in COP26, we want to relay our message to global community. And we also working with our ambassador in UK, our ambassador in the United Nations, how we can relay our grassroots voice to the global decision making. So our message is clear. We are not unheard. We are unheard, but not voiceless. We have voice, but we have not platform, or we have not space to raise our voice. So COP26, will be hosted in Glasgow. So this COP should be a people's COP, women's COP, youth COP, inclusive COP, and bring local voice. This COP will focus on the loss and damage and also focus on the human rights. So gender also a human rights issue. So we must focus on this conference of the parties and to discuss about these issues. So thank you from Bangladesh. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sohanur. It's always a delight to hear you speak with such passion and engagement of wanting to do something, and then watching this entire list unfold of all the actions that you take. It is really incredibly impressive of all the things that you are doing, and the way in which you engage all these young people in Bangladesh to join you in the actions and protests. So I want to give the audience a quick possibility. If you have any questions towards Sohanur, then you can raise your hand now or write them in the chat. And if not, then we move on to the second part of this seminar, which will be subgroup work. So I'll start to explain that already. If I see a hand raised in the meantime, then we can interrupt that. But for the time being, I don't see anybody raising their hand yet. So in the second part of the seminar now, we want to give the opportunity to everybody participating to have your voice heard, because up until now in all the previous seminars we always had, maybe 5 different speakers on certain topics, and the audience was just listening in. And as I said earlier, we want to move now, since we are reaching the end of the seminar series, to find out who you are as an audience, and how what your thoughts are and competences and expertise. And we want to give a space in the room to voice that as well. So as I can see here on my screen, we are currently 16 participants. So I would like to ask the tech support to make 4 breakout rooms, which would be then 4 rooms of 4 people. And I will first explain you what you're supposed to do. The first assignment in your subgroup is to assign somebody who can moderate your subgroup among the 4 people, and can take some note, because that person will need to give feedback in the plenary afterwards, so that we hear what you have been talking about. So you assign a moderator to your group, and who can give some feedback afterwards. And then you start to talk amongst yourselves. What do you think could be the best strategy for the MenEngage network, because we're talking about our MenEngage network, to assist the climate change movement, just like we are also assisting the feminist movement. We're trying to reach gender equality by working with men and boys. We want to think about what would be the best possible strategies to join the climate movement from our MenEngage perspective, which is quite a unique perspective in the world, given the fact that we work specifically with men and boys to get them to gender equality. But since we know that the gender inequality that exists and the patriarchal stereotypes are part of the sources, or maybe even the main source that created the climate crisis in the first place, we think we can definitely contribute as a MenEngage movement. And how do we do that in an appropriate way? And then I'm thinking also about some of the points that Sohanur was touching upon, like within the feminist movement, MenEngage thinks it's very important that we do not push women aside, or women's organizations, that we do not take the lead and speak for them. It's a very important fact in the MenEngage movement that we are there to support the women's movement trying to reach gender equality in any way we can, instead of pushing them aside and taking over, which would be the wrong way to go. I see a message from Vidar there, who says, what do I think would be the best possible strategies for MenEngage to assist the climate justice movement? I think that's indeed the proper question, yes, to ask. Okay, so that's the assignment for the subgroups. You will be in the subgroups, let's say 20 minutes, and then we get back to the joint room. We listen to whatever comes out, report from each of the subgroups, and then we can still have a discussion about this. Also, I see one question coming in from Jaraf Hamin to Sohanur, and the question is, Mr. Sohanur, how can climate activists work to achieve gender justice? So, Sohanur, I want to give you the floor to answer this question before we go into the breakout room.
Okay. Thank you, Katrin, and thank you, Zaraf, for your questions. So we should think in holistically, like we are divided on climate justice, we are divided on gender justice, but it's a same thing. We should focus on a wider social justice. We cannot achieve gender justice without climate justice or climate action, because climatic events hamper or create vulnerabilities for women, and we have also existing inequalities in our societies. So climate change create new inequalities, and also in climate justice issues we also should focus on gender justice. So we need both. It's mentioning like social justice. So when feminist groups are fighting for their rights, we as a climate group, we should express solidarity with them. When the workers in recently one coal-based power plant was killed, 7 workers, the workers were fighting for their wages, for their human rights, and police shoot dead the 7 workers. And we are fighting for their justice. So we are climate justice group. Why we should express our solidarity for the workers? So it's not only for climate issues, it's also for social justice issues. And our activists also raising their voice for this worker. And also we should express our solidarity with the trans communities when they are fighting. And trans community should support our climate movement. So it's cross movement building. MenEngage Alliance should support our cross movement building to system change and for achieving social justice. Thank you.
Okay, good. I think this is also a very interesting question to take with you in your subgroups, to think about how do we work with this element that we want system change and a global justice world, and how all these movements link into that, and how can we reinforce actions that we do from one movement to spill over and have positive win-win effects in the other movements as well. I think it's definitely one angle to think about. So I would like to ask the technical support now to divide people in the subgroups, and then we will call you back from the subgroups in 20 minutes time. I see people coming in from the breakout rooms. Vidar, I hope it was okay for your breakout room.
Yeah, and Arafat was just about saying something.
Yeah, Vidar, if you think we give Arafat a chance to finish what he was saying, then we can do it in plenary, or we start by giving a short resume of what your group has been saying, and then he can continue that discussion. Is that okay as well?
I tried to take some notes. I'm not so fast in writing in English, so I lost a lot of words. I can share kind of the essence of what I heard, but then you can fill in, if that's okay. So Jan, you said something along the lines of that we as MenEngage and within MenEngage, we need to explain the links between gender and climate and destructive masculinity norms, and that right now MenEngage focus only on gender and not on other structural violence caused by patriarchy and patriarchal masculinity norms. This was not exactly your own words, but would you like to just add or clarify?
Yeah.
Now it should be okay.
Yeah.
What I was saying is that within MenEngage, it's not enough at this moment. We are focusing still too much exclusively on the gender aspects, not really paying enough attention and learning enough internally about the linkages between patriarchal destruction and climate destruction, economic destruction, conflicts, and all that. We're focusing far too much, as far as I'm concerned, on the issues of gender injustices, which is very important, but not enough. And that's why I keep on saying the system change. And that's why I also feel we need to urgently start linking up with other movements that do have the environmental justice as their main brief, and I start understanding each other. And I think that goes the same for the issues that were related from Bangladesh side. No? If you don't see the linkages yet, it will be very difficult to move forward. But once you see the linkages, it becomes easier, even though you have to still focus on one thing. You cannot do everything at the same time. I think we should be honest about that. But if we don't start learning from one another, then we keep on focusing on our limited, narrow space, and then that doesn't help us. And I think that's where MenEngage still has a long way to go internally. And not be afraid to link up with others on the basis of our strength, but then with an open ear to listen to what the others have to offer to us and what we can learn from the others.
Thank you. And then we had Arafat, who is living in the coast area in Bangladesh, in the front lines. And Sohanur, would you like to summarize what Arafat was sharing? Maybe also the last part.
Yes, Arafat from in a frontline is a climate crisis area in Khulna. So he mentioned about the when men responsible for earning. So he mentioning about the economic justice relating to climate justice. So then the men has anxiety and they beaten their women and they're treating as a subordinate for these economic inequalities. So he focused on the education. So education. So due to this climate induced disaster, so when children, girls forced to the child marriage in 14 years old or 13 years old, and boys sent to child labor, so they are not getting proper education. So in whole life, yeah, they face inequalities. So he mentioned about education and also mentioned about the economic opportunities and also capacity building, because they are in the crisis but they cannot analyze it or they cannot interlink how they are hampering through climate or gender relation, and also social awareness. So MenEngage Alliance member can, if MenEngage support the MenEngage members, then this organization can support them and they will benefit from MenEngage directly. So it's his expectation.
Thank you. And Sajad.
And Sajjad from a hilly area, Bandarban, with a huge number ethnic minority, and he also shared same thing. And they believe education can transform their communities, also the indigenous community. So he more focused on also economic justice, also focus on education. So their voice is like same. So also he mentioned that girls participation or women participation in organization or government committee is very limited, and they need an enabling environment for raising their voice to ensure there isn't so MenEngage Alliance member can create enabling environment to tackle these men and masculinity issues, to tackle gender and injustice issues, he thinks. So if any kind of action the MenEngage Alliance strategy can include, then they will directly benefit in their climate crisis area.
Thank you. And that's how far. That's as far as we got. Sohanur shared before, and I was typing. So that's from our group.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good, thank you. Then the first breakout room to which I participated, I think Yasha was the one who was moderating that group. So Yasha, would you like to share with the rest of us what came out of it?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, so in our breakout room, we talked briefly about climate education as in not just in our country, in some other countries also. We know that climate, we don't often discuss used to discuss about climate change, as now that because of the COVID situation and other emerging environmental issues, we are now talking about it more often. So we talked about that we need climate education from a very early age of our childhood, and also with climate education it is also important good socialization and learning about the gender equality as well. And we need to promote caring masculinity for it, as in our country we see that not yet in disaster response as well, it is not women friendly in some other aspects also. So we tend to care more about creating equal opportunities for women, but in this process we somehow neglect the rights of men and boys. So both should be equally prioritized. And also we talked about educating them, raising awareness in the communities, but also mobilizing them and give them the opportunity to be actively participate in climatic movements and gender equality. And yes, if we can promote caring masculinity and the caring side of people, I think it will eventually you know teach them how to be more caring for our earth as well. So this is why we talked about more about promoting the caring side of men, and creating a equal space for both. And if anyone wants to add something, they can add. Thank you.
I can see Yasha in the chat. Somebody says excellent briefing. So you summarized it quite well. Okay. If there is nothing to add for the second group, then I suggest I open the floor here in plenary for a discussion. Anybody who would like to reflect on what has been said or maybe add something to this. Myself, I would like to say 2 points that might be an interesting addition to what has been said. One was that I mentioned also in the breakout room where I was, is that it's more of a question, is that climate change is something that raises a lot of emotions with people. People are fearful of what will happen to the world, and this fear can paralyze them into not doing anything anymore. Other people are angry, other people are sad about what is happening, are very ashamed, like myself. If you're from the generation of the baby boomers, you feel ashamed because it's mostly our generation that has destroyed the planet, and then you feel ashamed because you think you should have done more. So and I think a profound change is only done if you touch people on an emotional level. So what strategy could we use of involving people's emotional change around climate change in a manner that it activates them to do the right thing in the world? And how can we, as a MenEngage movement, assist people to talk about these emotions? I think that's an important job for us to do, to finding ways of doing that, because we have experience in trying to have men and boys talk about their emotions, which is not an obvious thing to do, but it's definitely in many projects that we try to do this in MenEngage. So that's one thing I wanted to add. Another one that I was thinking about is the importance, if you happen to be the privileged person, and in many ways, for example, I'm a privileged person because I live in Europe and I've got a white skin color and it opens doors in the world. And privilege is responsibility. And I think the MenEngage movement is very aware of the fact that we want to work with men and boys is to assist the women's movement in achieving gender equality, and not replacing the women's movement or pushing them aside or talking about them, and instead of having them speak for themselves. So this tendency of thinking, how can we serve the feminist movement and be part of it at the same time, but not in a way that we, try to take the lead. I think we can ask the same question when it comes to men in the climate movement. How can men who are often privileged or have maybe privileged positions in society, how can they use that privilege to make space or to give room to the less heard voices in the climate movement, and to ensure, for example, that the needs of women and children are taken on board, that they ensure that gender equality is prioritized in climate change actions and projects. I think that's also a very important role to play, to use privileges as a responsibility to make a space, to create a space for gender equality within the climate change actions. Anyway, I don't know if it's clear what I'm saying. I hope so. So these are 2 points that I wanted to add here. But anyway, please feel free to react, to speak.
Thank you, Katrin. Maybe I'd like to say something as well, because I didn't yet say anything in the breakout room either. For me, it was a wake-up thing when someone said that we are very much working with the symptoms, with climate crisis, with men's violence against women, and if we look at the root causes, we find patriarchal structures, we find capitalism, as Sohanur said, we find the dominating masculinity norms, and that's really challenging and tough to go there. But as MenEngage, we do have some knowledge and experience in how we can work with this, and how we can engage boys and men to change this. So instead of thinking that the climate crisis is the problem, look at it as a symptom, and the problem is at least one of the problems and root causes are the masculinity norms and the patriarchal structures and the capitalism. We can together look at that, and when we join our forces, we can bring in those different glasses. And MenEngage can definitely contribute in this. Yeah.
Thank you.
So my position in practical this global MenEngage Alliance should create a policy or guidings document for the regional communities, because the regional communities or regional body, they facilitate the country network, country secretariat. So when they are in their agenda list, climate crisis will be included, then they will create plan, they will their intervention. So we also focus on these SDGs, also focus on regional board, and also I repeat on issues needed our participation, young people participate on the regional board. Currently we are not included in regional board, currently we are not included in national board, and not member of the national community. So we are working on this, but without our involvement we cannot contribute, and needed more involvement of this intersectional organization, more participation on the general board. So then the national committee secretariat, regional secretariat, they will find out their local action on adaptation or mitigation with the masculinity lens, and they can doing advocacy with the ministry together. So currently the climate crisis or with masculinity lens is not included their agenda, and they need capacity. They cannot understand how climate crisis interlinked for the gender justice. So needed more capacity building for and all, with regional aspect. So gender movement or climate movement has difference between global north and south, or Asia or Africa, So needed regional capacity development, regional knowledge dissemination. Then they can create their local intervention to focus on this, both gender and climate, I think. Thank you.
Thank you, Sohanur. Okay. Anybody else who still would like to speak? I see a question to Sohanur. How has this masculinities lens been useful in your own advocacy with policymakers? Do you have any examples of putting it into practice? So Sohanur. So the question is, how has this masculinities lens been useful in your own advocacy with policymakers? Do you have any examples of putting it into practice?
Yes, thank you, Shinit. So in our advocacy work, so Shinit already known that we are work with a project. It was a SRSR for all. It was developed by the SRSR working group. So my involvement through this project. as a change maker. So our main Asian focus was the child marriage for Pakistan, for India, for Bangladesh. So we worked on ending child marriage with masculinity lens. And child marriage is the root cause for child marriage is also because for climate crisis, you know. So we was not focused climate crisis because in our project was not focused climate crisis. It was focused on child marriage itself. So under this project, we do a great advocacy for Bangladesh with masculinity lens on men and boys engagement to ending child marriage and with policy to advocacy with policymaker, ministry, and parliamentarian, and also bureaucrats, because in our countries bureaucrats they develop on all policy, or they have a very influence on the policy development. So we separately we create dialogue with parliamentarians, with bureaucrats, with media. So they accept our recommendation. Also, Yasha from our SRSR for all project from Bangladesh. So they accepted our agenda or accepted our proposal. So if we work on these issues, gender and climate issues with masculinity lens, so we think it will be fruitful or it will be productive. And I have planned currently to focus on SRHR inclusion on the national adaptation plan, and also masculinity issues also. But government is not taking it as seriously. They think gender is including all. So it will be when I will be successful, when all MenEngage partner in Bangladesh will join together and create voice, and they will create a recommendation. Then we can succeed in will be success in the advocacy. So it's not only for Bangladesh. In my talk, I am talking more about Bangladesh, but I think it's also contributing South Asians or our other change maker. So we also can share our experience. We have a youth steering group or youth working group, so we can take initiative, and also we have a large number of young change makers in Africa or many countries. So we should empower them also, but we should motivate them. So then they can join our wider movement, I think. Thank you, Shinit, for your call, for your questions. And I hope under our youth strategy, we will more work on advocacy on gender and climate with masculinity lens. Thank you.
Thank you, Sohanur. Okay. So is there anybody else who would still like to contribute in any way? Otherwise, we are going to close the seminar a bit earlier, but that's okay. It only needs to last as long as it needs to last. But I want to give the chance to anybody else who still wants to contribute here. Yeah, Vidar, please.
Yeah, and maybe while you're thinking, and just also before we end, it's nice to just share that we have the next webinar. Yeah, it's actually 1 week from now. It's next Thursday, and there we will focus on action, and then the whole aim of this long series of seven seminars is like a first step of this internal training or capacity building, we could say. And then in the 3rd of June, that session will be to establish a formal working group within MenEngage, focusing on climate justice and how MenEngage can really work with that. So that's really great. And whoever are interested in joining that group are welcome. And we will have a pre-meeting, I think the 15th of May, to prepare for that as well. And you saw in the chat, I posted a document which have links to the recordings of the previous 4 sessions, and they are amazing to look at, I think. And there's also an invitation to an online workshop group, which will run every Wednesday, starting from next Wednesday, 5 Wednesdays, to pilot test one material we have called Men in the Climate Crisis for reflective groups for on these issues, and to pilot test it, and for people to have a practical tool that we can use and adapt and change for our different contexts. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Vidar, can you share the document with a link again? Because I don't see it in the chat. Was it all the way at the beginning, or?
Yeah, in the very beginning. Oh, it's been lost. Okay, I'll share it again then.
Yeah, because I don't see it now, and it might be useful for people to have. Okay, good. Thank you very much. Also, I would like to add here that next week's session, the May the 6th, we have somebody coming from UN Women to talk to us. And you might know that UN Women is currently organizing a big seminar, a big conference in Mexico and Paris, which is part of the Generation Equality movement. And within the Generation Equality Initiative, there are different action coalitions. And one of the action coalitions is on gender and climate change and climate justice. And somebody who is part of UN Women and in this action coalition of gender equality and climate justice is coming to talk to us next week, May 6th. So that will be very interesting to hear. She's going to talk a little bit about what the Generation Equality Forum is about, and about the initiatives that they are doing. And then we can further develop discussion on how MenEngage can be involved in this. So it will be definitely worthwhile joining then and talking to people of UN Women. Okay.
Nafiul is raising a hand, I think.
Okay, yes. Nafiul, please go ahead.
Hello.
Yes, we hear you.
Yes.
I'm so sorry. I have some issues with my microphone and my connection, wireless connection. When we were in the board meeting, I wanted to say something that I couldn't. Basically, it is an issue, the growing up recent days and gender equality issues and climate issues and all. And we are getting involved with such a movement. It could be climate issues, gender issues, and child labor issues. And you can connect with everything nowadays, everything with this social concerning matter and all. All these are connected to the people, to the government, and to the local people, basically, government, and also international politics somehow. I believe so. So women are so important. By nature, women are so important by nature, and they are very active. They are productive. They are not for only growing up on giving men's child, not for doing a home decor things and all. I think not, at least here, not this time. Now we women are starting their higher education, being a great world startups. Basically, we look at women. If I have to connect my lens, I think women are better than a man. Women are better than a man. There nothing called as equality, because we always prefer that men are privileged. Men, we always stand somehow in the front side, and we always do some fight with many tiny things. Look, if I look on my board, my first room, there was a girl named Yasha Mannan who was the speaker, and she did well. She did very well, that we boys couldn't. So I think approach to acknowledge our society for true gender equality issues, and I think I don't think so. Many.
Did you finish the sentence, Nafyul? Yeah, it was a bit difficult for me to understand, but I heard a lot of praise for women and for the wonderful work Yasha did in the first breakout room. So you want to jump in, Yasha? I saw you raise your hand.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. The question that Nolan asked, that any thing that the government has put into practice. So the thing is, yes, we did that advocacy project on SRHR issues, and our recommendations from the local level was very much appreciated by them. But then as Sohan Bhai has said, that they won't incorporate SRHR issues, but it is not sure yet, as they have already addressed the importance of mental health, though it took a lot of time. But still, change is coming, but it is taking a lot of time. We already have a book called Bhalo Thako, which means stay healthy, which also addresses the importance of mental health. So in our perspective, yes, they are addressing these issues, but the process is a bit slow, which is making it hard for for the social change actually.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes. I think I can relate to that. The sense of urgency about the system change which is needed was very present as well with the young people in Europe who are part of Fridays for Futures. The sense that, it should not happen in 10 years. That's too late. It should happen now. And I think it's a very good suggestion to incorporate in any strategy that we develop, that sense of urgency, and how to communicate that sense of urgency to the people in power who take the decisions. Yes, good. Okay, Vidar also makes a good suggestion in the chat. If you all post your email address here, I can send the document by email instead, because Jan said he had a problem to get to open the document. So you can put your email address in the link there. Okay.
But the documents are available on the YouTube channel
Yes,
of MenEngage,
yes,
right?
yes,
The
yes,
same
yes. And
document.
on
Okay,
the
all right,
website, on the
Okay.
website, we
All right.
have an app about the Ubuntu
Right, okay.
Symposium.
Right. Okay.
So yes, absolutely.
For those who are not linked, okay, right.
Yeah. And this document also includes the invitation to the
Okay,
workshop.
then I want it, because I have not seen the invitation yet. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Great.
Okay, good. Okay, Vidar, if you agree, then I want to proceed and thank everybody for their presence and their wonderful contributions. We hope to see you again next week on Thursday. It will be 3:00 then, definitely, not 2:00. So it will be 3:00 next week. Thank you for participating. Have a nice week and see you again soon.